Let's jump back into our image map and grab a dirt texture. This one should work, and with the dirt texture we don't have to be quite so worried about scaling the texture in the model, because we're going to use it just as an overlay. So I think I might pull in a bit on the model, and on a new layer we'll throw down this dirt texture. Press the Alt key to bake it down. So I'm scaling in on the model, but I'm not rotating the model. I want to stay directly onto the model as I'm painting it. Bake it down. And like I said, just because I do this in a 3D program, you don't have to. Photoshop is fine. Algorithmic make Substance Painter, that's not a very good painting program if you do want to do it in 3D. Mudbox even, actually. I do use Mudbox occasionally. That's good. You can paint in 3D in that as well. Although I don't know if Autodesk are really going to be updating Mudbox much anymore. They seem to be ignoring that program a bit. They did update it for 2017. But they didn't add really anything new. Let's bake that down. Move our texture out of the way and our model in a bit. And let's play with our layers. So let's try a darken on this. Not a darken, let's try and multiply. Pull it back. So that's all. We're just going to pull it in just a bit. And again, remembering it's going to show up a little darker in 3D Studio Max than it does in Mari. That's just probably, it's mainly a difference between the gammas between the two programs. Okay, let's jump around to the other side and paint that texture in as well. Again, I'm just going to zoom out a bit and line up my model. And now I'll zoom back in. And again, make sure masking is still on. I'll zoom out a bit. I'm still working in the same layer. I still have our layer style turned on, so we'll see what we're painting as we're painting it in. Like I said yesterday, some people prefer to work this way so they can actually see what it's going to look like as they paint it. And they can paint in just the areas that they think need it, and the areas that they don't have to paint over. I do both. I work both ways. Let's make that down. This just gives you, doing it this way with the layer style already set up, gives you a more of a visual indicator of what you're doing. Corey, thank you for hosting me. That's very cool of you. Thank you. Kiori, is it? Kiori123? Yeah. Thank you for the host. I appreciate it. You guys are great. Just going to bake that down. Okay, I'll work on this one just here. Bake it down by hitting the Alt key. Thank you, I do appreciate it. Kiori, okay. Thank you. Let's just get a couple of these, more of these painted in. I may not do them all, like I won't paint dirt on all of them, I'll miss a couple of them. Hey Smurf, what is it, Smurfberry? How's things? Thanks for popping into chat and saying hello, I appreciate it. It's good of you. It's always good to chat to you guys in the chat. Okay, I'm let's bake this down. We're going to save our file and export it in and bring it back into Max. I just want to have a look at it. I still think it may need some dirt along the bottom, but we'll see. So we're going to go into our channel and export flattened, export everything flattened. Yes, it is Mari. That's exactly right. Yep, I do all of my texturing work in Mari. Hey, Montresor, is it? Yeah, no, I love using Mari for my 3D work, my texture painting work. I do all generally in Mari. Hey, Sniper Echo, how's things? We're going to call this one small column back, and we're going to call it underscore painted .tga. Really? I love Mari. I've been using it for years. I like the fact that you can use really large texture sizes with it without a problem. Let's export all patches in this. So yeah, all of my 3D texturing work I always use Mari for. I mean, Substance Paint is pretty good too. Well, like I was saying, you can use Mudbox, but I like Mari's interface. I find it easy to use. You haven't even heard of Mari Sniper Echo? Seriously? It's made by the Foundry. I think it's a UK company. It's used a lot in film work. A lot of film companies will use it to do their texturing work for the models that they use in film work. That's right. Modi for Mari. Modi for modeling, Mari for texturing, but I use Max for texturing, and I'm just about to jump back into Max now, and we'll assign that texture we've been working on. So I'm going to go into the material editor, and we're going to load up that painted texture we just made in Mari. I think it's this one here, small column back painted. All right. So now we've got that. Now, as I was saying, Mari is showing up the dirt texture darker than Max, so I actually want to pull it back just a little bit. So I'm just going to jump back into Mari, and this is a great thing about Mari and its projects and layers. You can go back and forth and change things really easily. So I'm just going to pull that dirt layer back a bit and re-export our flattened texture. We can overwrite the one that we just did, that's fine. Okay, we'll jump back into Max. Now again, if Max goes black like that, just reload the texture in the material editor. That'll pop back in. I think that's better, it matches up more with the rest of the model now. So we've textured up all of our columns, including the short columns we did around the outside here. So now I think we should probably move on to doing the banister railings. Just want to pull out and have a bit of a look around the model. Try to remember, I think I may have forgotten to thank McLovin. Glad you like it. We're not done with it quite yet. Like I said, we've still got to texture up the bits that are still just a flat shaded colour, like the pink banister railings and the grey columns and grey supports here, but they're really the only areas left to texture on the model. And then we're going to pull in the other angel statues and grow ivy, a flowering ivy over it before we export it and bring it into View to do beauty renders in an environment, 3D environment. You don't, Doki, you don't like Mari's interface? What program do you use to do your 3D texturing, Doka? Doka? Yeah, I've seen worse user interfaces as well, and you're all probably going to scream at me, but I really don't like ZBrush's interface. I can use it, and I do use it. I don't like it though. Thank you, Duka Blackheart. But tell me, what don't you like about Mari's interface? Duka, cool. I find Mari's interface to be easy to use. You've got to move some things around, like the default layout is a bit confusing, but yeah. Actually, so I know some people do like ZBrush's user interface, so I'm not going to say that, but I don't like it personally. It's because it's so different from any other 3D work program that you use. It's completely different. Substance Painter. You know, Substance Painter is very cool as well. Doku. Or Duka, sorry. Yeah, well, again, I use a Wacom tablet as well, Montressor, and I don't know, it's just finding things in ZBrush's interface I find a bit confusing because it's so different to any other 3D program that I've used. It has its own unique user interface. Yeah, I haven't actually played much with Blender's user interface, so I can't really say what that's like. You think it's super strange? Yeah, it is. Duka. I have Substance. I have a license for Substance, but I haven't actually installed it, so I haven't played around with the new versions of Substance for over a year now. Yeah, Galen uses Blender, and he's done some great work in Blender. So, thanks, Vertigo. I'm glad you like the scene. It'll look a little much better once we get the final statues in and get some flowering ivy growing on it. It'll just help to soften the model up a bit. And of course, once we finish doing the texturing work on the columns and the banister railings. But aside from that, that's really all we've got to do now are the banister railings, the columns and the supports. They still need to be textured up. And then, like I said, putting in the angel statues and the ivy. You feel like Mari's all over the place, Duka, sorry. I don't know why I keep saying that. Yeah, actually, Galen was saying he uses a lot of shortcuts in Blender. The shortcuts can be good to speed up your workflow. Thank you, Vertigo. I'm glad you like the colour palette. It's important to try and keep a bit of consistency. And as I was saying, when I do my painting work in Mari, I always try and stick to the same textures. That's to keep consistency throughout the model. So it all blends in together. It doesn't look like you're pulling textures from a half a different places. Because otherwise, yeah, it'll blend more easily if you try and stick to the same textures you've been using for the different parts of the model. Yeah, like I said, I haven't used Blender, but Galen was saying that shortcuts. He uses a lot of shortcuts in Blender, and like I said, shortcuts can be great to speed up your workflow. As I was saying yesterday, you'll see me actually hitting buttons a lot to do, say, a rotation around the model, and I do that just for you guys, or for anyone watching, so they can see what I'm doing, because I actually do have shortcuts set up or macros set up on my mouse where I can do it without actually hitting buttons. Right. So yeah, when I'm generally working on my own and I'm not streaming to people, I have shortcuts, macros, I should say, set up on my mouse where I can rotate my model without hitting a button. But because I'm streaming and I want you guys to see what I'm doing, I always make sure I hit the actual button itself. Now what we do? We did that back section of those columns there. So let's do one of these banister railing sections, or one part of one of these banisters. So I'm going to select the different parts that make up the banister. McLovin, I'm going to bring this into Eon View, and I'm going to render it up in that. So I use View to do all of my environment renders. So once we've finished texturing it up, then we will export the model, and I'll create normal maps for some of the textures, and then we'll import it into Eon View. And I'll show you guys my process for importing the model, creating the environment, a couple of cheats to render out View more quickly, because View can take a long time to render sometimes. And yeah, I'll show you all of that when I bring it into Eon View. But I use Eon View to do all of the render. I will use that to do the rendering. I do use V-Ray in 3D Studio Max to do some renders as well. But for the beauty shot for this model, I'll be using Eon View, because I sell my work on Cornucopia for them as well. So I always make sure I generally use their program to do the beauty render. Yeah. So I'm going to select the different parts of this model here. Just got to make sure I get everything. I'm going to go to my isolate selections just to double check. I missed a piece there, so let's just grab that bit that I missed. And double check I have it all, and I think I do. I'm going to attach all of these pieces together. I'm just going to throw an edit poly on it. I could collapse the stack to an editable poly, but if I throw an edit poly modifier on top, I can actually copy that to the other sections of the model without having to reattach it all. So I'm going to attach these pieces together. And again, I like to do this by hand, but you can actually attach a list here in Max if you prefer to do it more quickly or all at once. I like to do it by hand. That way I know exactly what I'm selecting, what I'm attaching. It's end isolation mode there. Okay, we're going to call this one, are they all straight? No, some of them are curved. So I'm going to call this one straight banister. And again, as I was saying, it's important to make sure that good housekeeping, you name all of the different sections of your model. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a list of things that you just don't know what they are, like box 1, box 10. So we have our banister attached. I'm going to throw on a underlying texture. We always do this before we take it into Mari. Just throw down a base color so that we can see it more easily in Mari. And I always use this grey texture just here. And I'm going to throw on a simple box map. Okay, now we're going to throw an unwrap UVW on top of that. We're going to use map channel 2. We'll move the UVs across. Again, I'm going to turn off map seams because I find it annoying. We'll open our UV editor and select all of the UVs. And we're just going to throw a flattened mapping on top of that. We'll deselect our UVs. Now we'll go do a render to texture. So render to texture. Again, if Max's interface goes a bit funky like that, just adjust the size of the actual box and it'll come good. We're going to use existing channel 2, which is the one we just created in the unwrap UVW. We're going to add a diffuse map. Again, I'm going to make this 2K. And as I was saying, it's always better to go bigger than smaller. You can always reduce the texture after the fact in Photoshop. I am going to change our path to our rework folder path. And we're going to leave it called straight banister. We're saving it as a target file.tga. You can feel free to use any format you like, but I like target because it's a lossless texture format. So we have our map channel, our diffuse map, our path, and our texture size. We're just going to render. Max is just complaining I haven't assigned a map slot for it, but that's fine. I want to do it by hand. I don't want Max to do it for me. Alright, now we can close down the render to texture. We've got our object selected. We're going to go File, Export, and Export Selected. Again, I'm in my rework folder and I'm going to call it Straight Banister, and we're going to save it as an OBJ file. Mari will accept FBX files now as well, but I'm so used to working in OBJ that I just automatically default to using that now. Sangreal, Legendary. It is 3D Studio Max. It's 3D Studio Max 2017. I don't know if, yeah, you can see it just on the top of my window up there. I still do use Max 2016 as well. That's because I need to save out my files for the creative market to version 2013, and Max 2017 will only let you save out back to Max version 2014. So I keep both of them on my hard drive. I use both of them, but generally now I'm working in between 3D Studio Max 2017. So we have our object selected. We've exported it as an OBJ. Like I said, Mari will take an FBX file as well, but I still prefer to work with OBJ. Just habit more than anything. FBX is probably a better file format. So now that we've exported our banister, let's jump into Mari. We'll save our file here, our project, and we'll create a new project. Alright, and we're going to call it Straight Banister. We're going to load up the OBJ file we just exported from Max, which is this one just here. Again, I'm just going to change my path here from my SSD drive to my hard drive. I don't want to fill up my SSD with temporary files. We're creating a 2K color texture. And actually, when I first started doing 3D work, I used a program called Right Hemisphere to do my texture painting, but that's a long time ago, and they don't actually make that software anymore. So now it's Mari for me all the way. And like I said, I have used Substance Painter, and I still use Photoshop to do texture paint to texturing as well. So can never have too many texturing programs. So we have our object loaded up. Let's bring in that temporary underlying texture that we created with the render to texture. So I'm just going to import into the layer stack. I'm going to go to our rework folder where we saved our render to texture from Max. Again, Mari defaults to tips, so just pop a star in there and you'll see everything in your directory. Straight banister is what we need. Straight banister.tga, that's the one that we created. And again, I've turned on flat shading in Mari just so I can see the model better as I paint on it, because I've found with shaded here it can get a bit odd. Now this has happened because I forgot one step in Max. I went straight into Mari without doing an important thing in Max. Once we've rendered our texture, I'm going to create a shader. I always work from all new shaders I create, I always create at the bottom so I know the last one I made. I'm going to create a standard shader. We'll use a bitmap. Straight banister, that's the one we just made rendered to texture in Max. We're going to plug that into the diffuse channel. We'll show shaded and show realistic. That's just good housekeeping so that we can see it in the viewport. I'm going to assign it to the material to the object, and it's going to go all funky. So to fix that, we'll go into our utilities tab, into our channel info, and we're going to copy the UVs from channel 2 into channel 1. That'll fix that up. Now we're going to clear out channel 2. That's just, you can leave channel 2 in, it just increases your file size for no reason, so I always like to clear it out if you're not going to be using it. So now that we've copied our UVs over, all we have to do is re-export the model. That one just there. Yes, we're going to overwrite and export. Now we can jump back into Mari. I'm just going to reloading that project that we just made. Thank you guys for following me on Twitch. I appreciate it. I always appreciate it when you guys follow my Twitch channel. It's great of you. Thank you. No, you didn't want to pick it up, so let's create a new one. Let's discard that. All right. Straight banister. Our OBJ file. I'm just going to set our temp directory to my hard drive. Again, we're creating a 2K texture in the color channel. All right, let's wait for Mari to finish loading that in. Again, I'm going to jump into flat shaded here so I can see the model a bit better. That red shading is because I have masking turned on. Now let's import our texture map that we rendered to texture in Max. Again, we're just going to go into our rework folder. Again, I'm just going to pop a star in here so I can see everything in my folder. It's that one just there, straight banister. I'm going to import. All right. Now I think I might actually turn off masking in this one. Let's go back into our image manager and pull in some texture maps we can use. So we'll start with the dirt maps that I generally use. Again, to keep everything consistent, I'm sticking to the same texture sets that I've used for the rest of the garden terrace model. But this folder is mainly dirt maps, alpha maps and dirt maps. So I want to shout out a thank you to Duca, Montresor, Kiori, RYRYB, and is that Digitalist? Thank you guys very much for following my Twitch channel. I really do appreciate it. I appreciate all you guys following me on Twitch. Very good of you. Okay, so we have those loaded up. Let's just pull in one more texture set. And aged and stressed is generally the one that I work with. Although I think I may pull in one other one, but we'll see. I just select all of those and I'll import them into Mari. And again, Mari is not loading these textures into its program. It's only putting a pointer to them. So you can load up as many texture files as you want. You won't be using your computer's memory. As I was saying to the other guys, if there's anything I'm doing that you are not sure about or you'd like me to explain a bit more if I can, or any problem you're having in 3D, feel free to ask me in chat. If I can help, I'm quite happy to. Not saying I know everything, but I've been in 3D I've been doing 3D for more than 10 years now, so I've used quite a few programs and worked in a few studios. Alright, let's start by throwing on a new layer, because I always work with a new layer. That way if we don't like what we've done, we can easily delete it. And I want to find a darker texture for these banister railings. We go into Max and look at the model. I like this darker texture we used for the columns, and I think that will look quite good around the outside and help to make the small columns in here pop a bit more. So let's see what we can do. Just going to grab a texture that I think might be interesting. No, not that one. I think this was the one we actually used on the columns, and this one could work quite well. Hey Sniper Echo, if I was starting out texturing, what software would I recommend? If you're starting out texturing and you don't have a lot of experience using 3D painting programs, I would probably suggest sticking to Photoshop or a 3D paint program, because let me just jump. In Mari, you can actually paint that way as well. You can go into UV viewport here, and you'll see your UVs are laid out, and you can paint that way. You don't have to paint in 3D. But Mari can be a bit intimidating because it does have a lot of different functions. So for somebody starting out, I would recommend Photoshop just to get the hang of UV painting. And then if you did want to use a 3D painting program, I would probably suggest Mudbox or Substance Painter. Both of those are very good as well. Substance Painter can get a bit complicated at times too though, but you can certainly paint in Mudbox in 3D. Even 3D Studio Max has a default painting program. You can paint in Max, which is very basic, that's all. Duca, what's the best way of avoiding repetition in texturing, like when you're texturing 10 duplicated objects? As I was explaining yesterday to the guys, what I tend to do, if I jump back into Max, these columns here, these small columns that run around the outside of the banister, inside the banister, what I did there was I created, where is that? It's here. I created 4 versions of that texture, so 4 variations on the texture. So you create your base texture, then you, in Mari in my case, then I create another 3 slightly varied up set of the same texture. And then once I've done that, so that's texture 1, that's texture 2, actually let's have a look, that's texture 1, on this side is texture 2, 3 and 4. And then you just vary it around the outside. So here, for instance, I'll go back to using texture 1. But because when you're rendering the model, you're never going to see that side and that side at the same time, you can copy the texture and people are not going to notice. So that's generally the way I suggest people, if they want to use the same texture on duplicate objects but without people noticing it, you're repeating it, just create 3 or 4 different variations of that texture depending on how many different objects you're doing, and just repeat them, but say the first texture is here, and the second texture, third texture, copy, and then the first texture, copy here again. So long as they're not right next to each other, you're not going to notice that you're repeating the texture, because that's what I've done here with these small columns. I have repeated the texture, just I created 3 or 4 different versions, and I don't place them right next to each other, the 2 versions right next to each other, and you won't notice that this one is repeated around here. That's my suggestion. That'll work in 90% of cases. It's only generally if you're doing a render where you're going to be either really close to the models, to the objects that you're repeating the texture on, that you've got to be a bit more careful. As long as they're not right next to each other, people are not going to notice repetition. They never do. No problem, Sniper Echo. Glad I could help. Alright, so let's jump back into Mari. I actually like to look at this texture, so I'm going to use this one. And again, this gets back to the consistency thing. I use this texture on the columns here and here. So keeping them, actually this is a different texture, but I like to look at that texture. Keeping it consistent will help to keep the consistency throughout the entire model. You're welcome. I don't know about being called sir. All right, let's start texturing this one up. And again, I've turned off masking at this stage because I'm not so concerned with texture stretching, because we're going to have to rotate the model and go over it anyway. So as I was explaining, I'm just going to jump into a front viewport here. That is front. Actually, that is back. So not that it matters. It's important when you start doing your underlying texture that you don't scale the model or scale the texture once you've started. You've got to keep it looking consistent again. So my advice is, if you're working in a 3D paint program and you want to paint your textures on, scale your model up till it just fits inside of your viewport like that, and then scale your texture up to the size that you want to start painting with. I'm just going to rotate that around 180 degrees. And once you've done that and started painting, don't alter don't scale the texture up and don't scale the model up. Just with this, particularly with the underlying texture, because you've got to keep it consistent and looking the same all the way around. And if you start scaling the texture or scaling the model, then you're going to lose that consistency. It's going to look odd. All right, let's have a look here. I actually like to look at that, the paint running down the sides here, and I think that would look quite good on these side pieces on either side. So I'm going to start there. Just going to line the texture up with that ledge just there and paint that through. And again, I'm completely painting over the old texture. The old texture was just so that we could see the model better in the viewport. I'm going to do the same with this one, but I'm going to choose a different part of the texture. So maybe they like that. All right. And again, with Mari, until you hit the Alt key, it hasn't been assigned to the UVs. So make sure you hit Alt before you move your model around. Otherwise, you'll lose that texturing work. You can set up Mari to do it automatically, but I like to actually hit a key to physically do it. All right, let's work on the top here. I like the lighter colour for the top. Alright, now I don't like that repetition that's happened here and here. I'm just going to bake that down by hitting the Alt key, and I'm going to probably remove the middle piece, I think. So I'm just going to choose a part of the texture that's relatively neutral and doesn't have any detail on it, like here, and paint that out. I'll bake that down. And that's just so that you don't notice that you're using the same texture constantly. Now, I'm moving the model, but I'm not scaling it. So that's an important distinction. You can move your model around as much as you want, just don't scale it up or down. And don't scale the texture now either. I think for this bottom section, I like the darker part of the texture more, so I'm going to what am I going to do? I'm going to use this darker part here, I think. And again, I'm going to remove any part of the texture that I think is going to look odd because it's repeating. So I'm just going to paint this in to blend it together a bit. Like that. I actually don't mind these white parts of the texture, but I don't want that repetition again. You can notice that you can tell that they're both the same texture. So I'm going to pull it. I'm going to paint over this part just here with this other part of the texture, so it looks completely different. I'm going to bake that down. All right. Let's move around to the other side of the model now. And again, I'm just lining it up so I'm looking directly onto the model. I don't have it angled up or down at this stage anyway.